Welcome to a movie of Ethan Hunt. Except Ethan Hunt in this case speaks Russian, but he still blows up things with his team. Thank you for joining. My name is Lieuwe Jan Koning, and from the Security Operations Center floor here at Onset, we bring you Threat Talks. And the subject of today is the Russia GRU Viasat Hack. Let's learn all about it. Let's get on to it.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
Let me first introduce my two guests of today. On my left side, it's Luca Cipriano. He's a threat intel specialist here at Onset, and he's going to tell us about how this attack happened. And on my right side, it's Maas. He is a field CTO of Onset, and his job is to make sure that he doesn't get a chance. So, Luca, I said Russia. So you must be convinced. I based that off of you, of course, of your research. So
yes.
You must be convinced this is Russia. Why?
Well, imagine this. It's February 24, 2022. It's 3 a.m. UTC. Suddenly you have 5,800 wind turbine in Germany that lose management control. What's happening? 40,000 modem that are using two-way service from KSAT, so from Viasat, they're down. 24 February 2022, 3 a.m., same time, Russia is invading Ukraine. Much of a coincidence?
Well, it could be, but I'm sure you have even more evidence.
There's more.
So, but first, Rob, satellites.
Yeah,
apparently, cool. Huh? Yeah. So what's the asset here?
So Viasat, a company that was hacked in this attack, that delivers satellite services to his customers, and connect more or less his customers to the internet. And they do that by the customers get a Viasat modem, which is connected to an external antenna pointing to the satellites up high. And by sending data to the satellites go back to a ground station of Viasat, which functions as a gateway, where the traffic comes in and then as a gateway can be sent to the internet. But before that, of course, the modems are being authenticated, giving an IP address on the network and making sure that the connection is being set up. So that's what Viasat does.
And what's this kind of network? So it's like an ISP, huh? Internet provider?
Yeah, it's kind of like an ISP.
So what is it typically used for, business-wise?
Yeah, communications, getting communication, especially on locations, of course, where there are no landlines.
Yeah, they use a lot for, civilian, but also military, but also like transport, for example, airplane, this kind of things. So it's widely used not only for military reason, but also for
so the Wi-Fi on my plane, if I fly, then typically you now have internet access. Used to be this one single moment where you were not connected and could actually sleep.
It was finally some rest, but that's over.
That's thanks to these same satellites.
I found it a bit difficult to throw a Cat5 from the plane down and then just fly with
just a fiber cable.
With or a fiber cable.
So these were attacked by the Russians. How?
How? Okay, well, so the story begins like most of the attacks, leaked, compromised credentials. So what happened is the attacker used...
wait. So Rob, this is easy. This is easy.
Yeah, this is really...
don't leak your credentials.
Yeah, exactly. This I would basically almost say this is a stupid mistake to make and not necessary. Even if you lose credentials by tripping into a phishing attack, you still can easily enable multi-factor authentication, maybe whitelist some of the IPs you allow to access your network. So there are a lot of countermeasures you can take to make it really difficult to get a connection, even if you have correct credentials.
For your point, this is even it would have been even easier because the attacker compromised credential and connected to a VPN gateway via Tor network. So that's what you just mentioned.
Yeah, exclude Tor network. And Tor is often used for people that are hiding themselves or are hiding what they are doing.
So would it be fair to say that every authentication to get into your network especially, or anything that's exposed publicly at least, that has to have multi-factor?
I would say so. You can make, of course,
can you think of a scenario where you don't do that? No, that took too long.
No, that took too long.
No.
Yeah.
but
yes, I have
we
a
also
scenario.
see. Oh God.
where the website or the provider don't offer multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, then
there are still.
But then you need a different service.
This is a matter of supply chain security. Don't choose that provider, right? No, but that's my point.
No, but some websites still don't have.
But don't
some obligation.
Don't buy service from them then. Would it be a fair statement in this year?
Yeah, I think he can set it up as a requirement.
But on the multi-factor, we've seen attacks to multi-factor as well. We've talked about this before in previous episodes.
We know that SMS is pretty weak nowadays, especially for attackers of this kind. But there are a lot of...
if you do have MFA, you still got to wonder, okay, do I have the right MFA?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So which one is the best technology?
I'm not sure if there is really a best technology. You can even do multi-factor, so use certificates is a good thing to do, especially make sure they are not easily exportable from the device. Having a token generator, not by SMS, but a different solution.
A generator. So something that's really offline that you cannot. Yeah. But then still, I can get tricked with an email into.
Yeah, they still try it, but you make it much more difficult for the attacker to gain.
But typing in a code, I mean, we've seen so many attacks where that actually was also a weak point.
Then they call you and say, hey, I'm from the bank. And can you put in your PIN and then give me the code that you get back?
I literally yesterday I got a text for that I was logging in from Paris to some kind of...
Was it nice in Paris?
I don't know. I wasn't there. That's the whole problem. And called this number, a local phone number. I was like, we haven't had the time since yesterday, but we're actually going to call them. Maybe there's a next episode about this.
Actually, that's funny because on I think it was on Telegram, but there are Telegram bots that with AI, they actually do voice call phishing for multi-factor authenticator. Yeah. So you can select like a lot of things, like for example, if it's PayPal or whatever, and then it will call the number, and then you will have this automated voice that say, hey, we detected a fraud, so we send you a message.
That's really compelling.
Please digit the code here or something like that.
So all multi-factors where you have to type in a code then shouldn't be done then. I mean, that's what we all do today, but that is then flawed.
Well, I mean, you should know that.
It's getting harder, and
you should know that no provider will always ask you that. So that is something that you shouldn't...
But we're still humans, you know the last episode.
Tell my mom, tell my dad, tell my aunt, tell me. Yeah. But there are other solutions. I mean, banking apps these days, they need you to scan your QR code on your screen, for example, and that's something you cannot type in.
Yeah, but it also comes back. Yeah, it scans it, but it often comes back with a code that you need to type in then.
But not for me.
Okay. Depends on the bank. we should talk.
We should talk about it.
Anyway, sorry for
we should sidetrack a bit.
So
you can make it more difficult.
Yes. They got credentials. And then?
Yes, they are in the network. So they managed to get inside the network via the VPN gateway. And of course, then they landed on the management server. And from there, they started to do, their dirty deeds, like lateral movement, reconnaissance, all these kind of things, until they finally end up in an FTP server, which is the server that is used by Viasat, by the provider, to install firmware upgrades to the modems. So it's used to push the updates.
But why did they have access to this system then? I mean, they got
extra compromised credentials. So it's not specified how, but I guess...
so there was a legitimate use case where people remotely with this VPN could access this?
Yeah. But they should have other credentials. They got other credentials, so I don't know if they...
Maybe they're sniffing the network?
The others sniffed the network, or they managed to do something at the domain controller, or some dumping credentials, but they managed to get extra credentials for that. Because this is the part of the network where they have also the servers used for administrations, and also servers like SSH, skipping stone source server that they can SSH in the device if they need. So it's the specific part of the network that you mentioned before for management.
Yeah, but we're talking about windmills here, or what's that? The not the Dutch ones, but
the German windmills you're talking about.
Yeah, aren't we? The stuff that I put down, the energy stuff?
That's the windmill, they did not go down, but they lost connection to the monitoring because they were using those ISPs. So the windmill were actually working, but they couldn't monitor them anymore. They couldn't check, or I think maybe remotely control.
Yeah, so it was on the IT network, not on the IoT network. That's where, that's where I was going.
Yes.
But that's then a small, I mean, if you're in the management system of your IT environment, they could probably even gotten farther than that.
Well, yes. I mean, as Rob explained at the beginning, there are two sides that, as you can see also in the pamphlet that we created. The side of the users, let's say, and the side from the Viasat, and that's connected via a satellite. And this part was the windmills are connected to the top part. So
yeah, Luca is referring to the infographic that we put in the show notes that explains the whole attack in detail. So you can pause the video right now and download it and then continue, then you can follow along. Okay. Then what happened?
So, well, they use the FTP server as a staging server to push a malware to these routers. So they pushed a malware, which is a type of malware which is called a wiper. And as the name suggests, it wipes the device, which is called acid rain. And of course, knowing the malware, reverse engineering the malware, this is another way to tie pieces of code to previous malware used by Russia, so another way to attribute. But I mean, already the timing,
so the weapon that was deployed there clearly was from a Russian cyber factory.
Well, there's a lot of indicators, including the timing. That's the biggest indicator, which points it to Russia.
Now, maybe before you continue,
yes.
Here are already a lot of steps that can also make it more difficult for the attacker. Lateral movement, of course, which we see quite often once initial foothold is being gained, that the attacker is going to move through your network to see what he can find and get. You can make it pretty hard by segmenting your network or pursue zero trust as a strategy, and really make strict policies around it again. So that's one way of making it harder and maybe even impossible. The second thing you can do is install EDR solutions. So they can see the behavior of the system and detect if something abnormal is going on, and then report on that, and even block the abnormal processes.
It sounds like our day-to-day job here.
Yeah, this is what we do for customers. Yeah.
Okay, so they push this malware to the device. What do this malware do? Well, it starts an in-depth wipe of file systems on the device. It starts to delete all the files that are in the non-volatile part of the memory of the device. It just overwrites a lot of file systems, rendering them, void. What else it does? It starts to iterate over all the possible file identifiers. For example, /dev/SDA, the one that tells you all the disks that you have, and then it starts to wipe all the files related to that are in this file identifiers. And
this is all on those management servers of the equipment.
No. This one is on the devices itself.
This is on the Viasat modems.
The FTP server pushed the malware
the modems that connect to the
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So 40,000 got wiped for that.
The modem saw it as a firmware, right?
Yes.
And those are everywhere, right? It's not like you can easily swap them out. Those devices.
Yeah, they're everywhere, exactly. So you need to have them, and actually to do reverse engineering, they had to have them shipped from Europe and the places where these were, basically. So
it took them a long time to recover from this.
But also a long
this
time
is
to
the
get them, to analyze them.
But this is the blowing up part if we're talking about eat and hunt. By wiping them completely.
Exactly.
And it's basically the same as blowing them up.
Yeah. So once the malware has done overwriting all the files, then it just triggers a reboot. And with the reboot, then when the device starts, it misses all the critical file systems, so it basically break the device.
So, and why this way? What they're trying to achieve here then?
Well, they didn't do only that. There's more.
Oh wait, one of the crucial things we can already point out now, before it even gets worse, is that the communications, of course, are lost if you cannot boot up the modem. Then you don't have communication, and when you start a war, communication is crucial. Talking with your troops, for example.
Yeah.
So this already had a big impact.
These were modems for different purpose, but this is the energy, but the equipment was still running, but we couldn't steer it anymore.
Well, it was running as a brick.
Big risk. But it was still producing power.
I mean,
no hospitals went out of power or so.
But on the battlefield is a different story. Yeah, the troops can hopefully function on themselves, but they did not
always
have
plan for HA then. I always have a different means.
Bring a fiber cable and
you should have a second line.
Starlink as well. Two satellites.
Still satellite. Exactly.
It's a different network.
Rent a network from a Russian provider.
Then you're sure. Might not suggest that, maybe, but yeah. Anyway, well, what I mentioned is there's more. It's because, of course, they didn't bring down all the devices, so there was still some.
How many did they brought down?
About 40,000.
Oh, just a bit.
Yes. Just a bit. Yes. But what they did, they started a volumetric attack against all the remaining. Against the. They used the DHCP to start a volumetric attack. So they flooded the network which DHCP requests. The important thing to know here,
DDoS, like all the others we talked about
discussed
before.
about it. Yes, the important thing to mention here is that it's not that every modem can send a DHCP request to their server. So they have their own PKI in place. Anyway, the device they need to identify before requesting a DHCP server. So all these devices that contributed in the volumetric attack, they were legitimate devices with a legitimate subscription active. Because even if the subscription is expired, then the DHCP request is sent somewhere else. It wouldn't end up on the DHCP server because they have a authentication method in place. Aside from that, they did not use only one method, but they use different method, for example, DHCP request, DHCP decline, DHCP release, to create this problem. So they started with one, and as soon as the engineer found out, hey, this is what's happening, let's fix it, then they switched to the other, and then again, something was happening. So it took time for them to really adapt the incident response to mitigate successfully.
What I don't understand is, what was the victim of this volume attack then? So because they brought down 40,000?
Their side, this point is the Viasat side, the remaining part of the network where they have the DHCP server that assigns.
Yeah, okay, so with those devices that they wiped already,
those are wiped, and that's it. Then they didn't wipe all the devices. There were other devices that they started a volumetric attack.
Yeah, so and during this DDoS, you cannot restore your network because every new device that you add to it will end up in the DDoS.
So you're trying to survive the first battle, which has all those devices down, but it gets really complicated because the remaining devices are used to launch an attack on yourself.
Yeah, and then I don't know now if it's all the devices, all the remaining devices, but a big part of the devices, so probably not all the remaining devices, but I also think that it's really difficult to understand what is happening. Because like, okay, well, you start with wind turbines losing connectivity, and then suddenly you realize, oh, 40,000 are down, and now, oh, there's too much requests on my net. So you really also need to understand what's happening, what's going on.
Well, in conventional warfare, confusing the enemy is an important part, huh?
Yeah.
Perception.
Shock and no, what was it?
Shock and awe.
Yeah.
But they could something about this. Not that much. We discussed DDoS already a lot in previous episodes, but it mostly comes back to limited the incoming traffic. So you will lower the quality of your network, but it's already down with the DDoS. So maybe just lower the performance of it and only accept a few packets at a time that you will resolve, and then hopefully you can slowly bring back up your network.
It must have been stressful times.
Yes, for sure.
To defend. Yeah. All right.
I had to work over the weekend a lot as well. So
it's not that different.
Poor us.
Guys, how do you prepare for a thing like this? Because these attacks, well, it starts with credentials. That may be the easiest part where you can block it. But there we know from experience that there are different ways to get into systems. So let's assume that this happens to you. So how do you are a big energy company or you have a lot of IT. How do you prepare for such an attack?
But as a provider or as the user that buys the...
As a user of the equipment, so I am a energy company, for example, and I'm the CISO.
On the user side, in this case, it was very, very difficult.
You can have a second line with a different ISP, for example.
If that management is that important to you, then you should consider a second line indeed.
Yeah, one ISP is no ISP, and two ISP is one ISP.
But the question is one ISP bad? If you can just survive without a couple of days with management access, why should I pay a lot for a second ISP?
Depends how critical it is for you.
Depends on your assets. So we're back again.
We're back
to protect
again.
services and a risk analysis on those. And If it's too crucial for your business, then make sure you have multiple ways of accessing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Aside from an attack, ISPs, they go down. We see it on a daily basis. That something can happen. It can be like a tornado that breaks down a tree and it goes. I mean, it happens.
There is space agencies experimenting with bringing down satellites. And the response to that is to put in a lot. Elon Musk is launching one every... Well, he's planning to launch 400 a year or so, I read. So there's that race as well. All right. Well, we learned a lot, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you for your insights. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you liked what you heard today and you want to learn more, because next week we have another episode on around the same subject, another deep dive, please like us, because that allows us to spread the word more, and subscribe so you will be sure that next Tuesday you will have another episode in your inbox. We'd love to hear your feedback. Email us at team@threat-talks.com. And from the Security Operations Center floor here at Ontoit, I thank you very much and hope to see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Ontoit Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.